بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم صل على محمد النبي وأزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وذريته وآل بيته كما صليت على آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. I'm really sorry I took too long in Arabic khutbah. I didn't notice the time. So we continue to talk about Sura Al Bayinah and the points I touched on in Arabic khutbah. Number one, according to the first ayah in Surah Al Bayinah, you can tell that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has divided the kuffar in his sight into mushrikeen, meaning the pagans who associate other deities with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Ahl Kitab, and the people of the book. Both are labeled kuffar according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his book. Whoever says otherwise, then he's terribly wrong, and you have to correct this to him, that the kuffar are divided into two kinds. Actually, even the mushrikeen probably had an original book one time, but it's in a so far distant past that there's not much traces left of it, and that is why they are called mushrikeen. Even the mushrikeen of Arabia at the time, they still had some remnants of the religion of Ibrahim and Ismail, but they were labeled mushrikeen. Ahl Kitab, the only difference between them and the Ahl Kitab is that Ahl Kitab still have some traces of what was revealed to their prophets. They still have some traces, but it is also so corrupt that it is impossible to discern what is the truth and what is the falsehood in their books. And that is why, according to this first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates to us that they had no hope of coming out of this darkness of their books, except by the sending of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لم يكن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين منفكين. They can't get out of this darkness and liberate themselves from the falsehood except with a new book, because it is impossible at this point, even that time, and of course even now more, impossible to go back and trace what was really revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to them and what was not, what is true and what is false. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent another messenger. قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولُنَا عَلَى فَتْرَةٍ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Allah said that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came at a time where there was a gap between the prophets. It was 500 years, 600 years, more than 500 years, between 500 to 600 years between Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So by that time, the original books were totally lost. Even today, they cannot trace. And actually, I have some quotes from one of their scholars. He's a scholar he's a professor in the University of North Carolina, religious studies. And he specializes in what's called textual criticism, going back and trying to find what did Jesus really say, and where are the original sayings in the Bible. And he also specializes in early Christianities and in the historical Jesus. He has many books. His name is Bart Ehrman. Maybe some of you have heard about him. I got this directly from his blog, his page. He says, and I will quickly say this and summarize it. He says about their books, and I'm saying this because some Muslims are deceived. Some Muslims go to their churches, and some Muslims think that you can listen to them. You can't. In Arabic khutbah, I said so many scandals in their books. Inshallah, I'll get to say it to you as well in English. But quickly, what are these books that they have today? What they call the Bible and the Old Testament, the New and Old Testament. He says we have 5,700 manuscripts, but we don't have any extremely early ones. Nothing close to the time of Isa alayhi salam. He says most of them are from the Middle Ages. Centuries, many centuries, and some of them are over 1,000 years after the original. Imagine that. So there's a huge gap between the time of Isa alayhi salam and the existence of any manuscript. Hundreds of years, and some of them, the more complete ones, are 1,000 years or longer. What has happened in between? Total corruption in between. And we have evidence to this. Maybe we'll recite to you some of that evidence. Anyhow, so that is the kind of manuscripts they have. For us Muslims, alhamdulillah, we have an oral tradition by a sound connected chain of narration to the Prophet ﷺ, by not one chain, by many chains from every part of the Muslim world, and the text is exactly the same. Whether you go to China or you go to Morocco, it is exactly the same. People who have never met are reciting the same words exactly by the letter and by the vowel and by the sound. The only explanation of this is that the text has not been changed at all. Not even the way it is pronounced. Not even the way it is pronounced. Not only that, wallahi, in some recitations, the way the lips, they tell us how you should hold your lips even though it does not produce a sound. Something called ishmam. So it is something very delicate in qira'ah. It's called ishmam. They tell you to purse your lips while you're pronouncing مَا لَكَ لَا تَأْمَنَّا عَلَى يُوسُف. Even pursing this lips, they've transmitted to us, subhanallah. How is that? What kind of miracle is this? Even that oral tradition is one thing, and this is what we rely upon. But even then, we have manuscripts that date back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Go and look at the Birmingham manuscript, University of Birmingham. Most of our manuscripts are in their universities, and they are the ones who are telling us, oh, we found the manuscript from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Makhtutat Sana'a in Yemen. May Allah relieve the people of Yemen. Actually, people of Yemen are in a big disaster. They're in a famine, basically. So all of us have to go and try to donate. And there are ways to donate. You can go to, I just got an email today from IslamicReliefCanada.org. You can go and donate to Yemen. You can do that. Millions of people are starving. Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, they found 40,000. And this in the mosque, this masjid. Prophet ﷺ had sent one of the Sahaba to build this masjid, the Masjid of Sana'a. And he told him how to put the Qibla. Although he never went to this masjid. There's a hadith on this matter. Amazing hadith on this matter. Prophet ﷺ describing to him, you look at this direction, you'll see a mountain. You look at this direction, you see this. Build the masjid there. And he told me the exact angle. And this was measured. And nowadays, and they found it is one of the most accurate qiblas. Takes you directly to the Kaaba. Subhanallah. Wallahi, you can leave the city and get lost. If you walk outside of Medicine Hat, go to the farms and try to come back. Go on your feet and try to come back. Wallahi, if you don't see the city lights or the buildings, you cannot come back. It is easy to get lost. Prophet ﷺ is describing to one of the Sahaba how to make the Qibla, and they've measured this. Inshallah, I'll try to bring you this hadith, authentic hadith, and could only be verified nowadays, because now you can see on Google Maps. Actually, I saw a YouTube video on this, on Google Maps, showing you the Qibla of the masjid and how they drew a line directly. It is so difficult actually to get a Qibla direct in one direct line. Even this masjid, I don't know how they did it, but if we check, we might find the discrepancy. But it's okay, because the Qibla, according to the hadith, could be this wide. It doesn't have to be directly. بين المشرق والمغرب قبلة, according to the hadith. It could be this wide, so it's okay. So if you miss the Kaaba a little, you're bound to miss the Kaaba. You cannot really hit the Kaaba directly. I bet you. Maybe inshallah we'll check on this matter. Anyhow, the Masjid of Sana'a, 40,000 manuscripts they found. And it was actually a flooding and to the basement, and they found all these manuscripts. Those manuscripts, some of them were written by Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu himself. Imagine that, Mustafa Ali ibn Abi Talib, from the time of the Prophet, and some of them from after the Prophet ﷺ. Yani wallah, I don't know what to say. We have so much evidence, but we don't even rely on manuscripts. But still, we have manuscripts dating to the time of Prophet ﷺ and after him. Now, so he says about their manuscripts. 1,000 years later, look at this, and that's his wording by letter. I took it from his website. All these surviving manuscripts, all of them disagree with one another. All of them disagree with one another. Look what he says. He says, apart from the smallest fragments, small fragment could contain one word or two words, very little. Some manuscripts are only, he says, a size of maybe a credit card, very small, few words. He says, apart from the smallest fragments, no two of the manuscripts are exactly alike. How can somebody trust this? How can somebody even think of this as a religion? He says, how many differences between the manuscripts? He says, hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. I'm not saying 10 or 100. If there was even 10 differences, it's a problem. It shows you the book is not preserved. He says hundreds of thousands of differences between the manuscripts. He says it is probably easiest to put the matter in comparative terms. He says there are more differences in our manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. More differences than there are words in the New Testament. And he goes on to say that many of them do not affect the teaching, but many of them affect the teaching completely. Affect the teaching completely. We're just saying this to show you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved this book and did not preserve any other book. History tells us this. The evidence that they bring to us tells us this. It is a proof of what Allah said, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. I will preserve it. Allah Himself will preserve it. But for their books, He says, بِمَا اسْتُحْفِظُوا مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. He said, I gave them the responsibility of keeping the books. Because Allah wanted their books to be only till the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then they have to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ يعني أهل الكتاب قَدْ جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ. He came to you. Not only that, وَلَا تَكُونُوا أَوَّلَ كَافِرٍ بِهِ. Allah said, do not be the number one kafir. Because if you reject the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are the number one kafir if you are the people from the book. Why? Because you had all the evidence that should lead you to believing the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know what books are. You know what Allah is. Right? You know so much. You have so much knowledge. You are more entitled to follow the new prophet, the true prophet when he comes. If you don't do that, then you have the biggest problem. You are awwal kafir. You are the number one kafir. So for people to come today and say that, yes, you can be a Jew or a Christian and still be in Jannah. No, this is not going to happen. If you have a Jannah from your own pocket, you can give it to them. But Allah's Jannah is only for Muslim. Prophet ﷺ said, لا يدخل الجنة إلا مؤمن. None will enter Jannah except if he's a believer. If he's a believer. Now, even the munafiq amongst the Muslims who come and pray with the Muslims are not going into enter Jannah. If their nifaq is the major nifaq i'tiqadi, in their belief, if they have a problem with their belief, they will not enter Jannah. Imagine that. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from this confusion. It's a big problem, wallahi. I'm sorry I didn't really mention most of what I mentioned in Arabic khutbah, but I also mentioned the English khutbah things I didn't mention in Arabic khutbah. So inshallah, we're equal. And maybe after the khutbah, after the salah, if somebody wants to listen, I can mention some of the things I mentioned in Arabic khutbah as well. Salah time. I'll just mention the salah time and then we'll do the iqamah and so food donation, please donate generously. And I reminded you of the Yemen. Please, we are all, alhamdulillah, satisfied. Our stomachs are full. We have our fridges full. These people are dying from hunger, okay, and thirst at times too. So please go and look IslamicReliefCanada.org and see what you can do. Fajr Salah Iqamah, 7 a.m. instead of 6. Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay with 7 a.m. because we had a problem with this? You can talk to the Imam. Are you okay? Okay. 7 a.m. and Dhuhr 2 p.m. Asr 4 p.m. Maghrib 6:15. So Dhuhr and Asr are the same. No, for Asr a half hour early. Fajr 7 a.m. Maghrib 6:15 instead of 6:30. That's 15 minutes earlier. Isha the same, 8:30. Inshallah, and we'll try to keep the class after Maghrib and after Isha regularly as much as we can. Okay. Inshallah. مواعيد إقامة الصلوات الفجر الساعة 7 صباحا بدأ 56 دقيقة. الظهر كما هو الساعة 2. العصر الساعة 4 بدأ 4:30. المغرب 6 و15 دقيقة بدأ 6:30. والعشاء يبقى كما هو. وعندنا درس بعد المغرب وبعد العشاء إن شاء الله في حديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم إنا نسألك بأسمائك الحسنى وبصفاتك العلى وباسمك الأعظم الذي إذا دعيت به أجبت وإذا سئلت به أعطيت. يا أرحم الراحمين، يا أكرم الأكرمين، يا أجود الأجودين، رحمن الدنيا والآخرة ورحيمهما، يا حنان يا منان يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. نسألك يا الله بأنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت الأحد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآله كما صليت على آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم نسألك لأنفسنا ولأزواجنا وذرياتنا وأهلينا ولإخواننا ولأصحابنا وللمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم لا تدع لنا في هذا اليوم العظيم المبارك ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا ميتا إلا رحمته، ولا مريضا إلا شفيته، ولا مبتلا إلا عافيته، ولا جائعا إلا أطعمته، ولا خائفا إلا أمنته، ولا مهموما محزونا إلا فرحته، ولا مظلوما إلا نصرته، ولا أسيرا إلا فككته، ولا ولدا إلا أصلحته، ولا ضالا إلا هديته، ولا عدوا إلا قصمته، ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا رب العالمين. آمين. وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله ثم قال